her son.
Oh, we're going to, okay, we understand. We're going to, there's Charlie Jr.
And here's Charlie Ritkers now, defense attorney, stepping up. So Charlie Ritkers, who defended Skylar Richardson in this trial that's gone on now for a few weeks. He is up there at the lectern getting ready to speak. Media surrounding him.
Press conference. If you guys have questions, please ask us.
House Bill 86 says she'll only do 180 days to serve the maximum sentence. Do you expect that to happen?
No.
Why not, Charlie? What are your thoughts?
She's already gone through 2 years of misery in our small knit community, and I'm not the judge, but I can't expect him not to take that into consideration.
Charlie, you were sitting next to her when the words were read off of her. Can you just describe that moment, your emotion, what was going through your mind? Just describe that moment for us.
About the tensest moment you can ever feel, and it was tense.
Did you expect this outcome?
I did. I believed in the case. I still do. Skylar's innocent, and the jury just found her not guilty, which is not synonymous with innocent, but I truly believe she's innocent.
What did you think about the fact that it took only about 4 hours?
I think the jury followed the law.
When you first heard that question about the abuse of a corpse, were you thinking that perhaps they'd already decided the other counts?
We were hoping. We were hoping. We thought that, if I may, we thought that if it was going to be an early verdict, we thought it would be favorable to us, but we're not jury readers by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm curious, to help those who are viewing right now or watching this understand the abuse of corpse charge, and as opposed to the other three, there's still a guilty verdict, a component to this verdict. Help people understand what that means in your mind.
Well, it's the lowest degree felony that someone can be convicted of. It's what we call a fifth degree felony. There are 5 levels. This is the lowest level.
So her bail was revoked?
Revoked.
It's typical for Judge Oda after a jury trial on any conviction, even a misdemeanor conviction, to put someone in jail pending sentencing. That's Judge Oda's typical protocol.
Did you expect the pre-sentencing investigation and all of that to take place in less than 24 hours?
I'm glad it is. I didn't.
It's fast, right?
I didn't think that far ahead.
Is your sense that Skylar is satisfied?
What do you think? Come on, seriously.
Well,
she's facing life in prison.
I mean, I would.
And she's now looking at maybe a 6-month sentence maximum. Come on.
What were you with her during the time the jury was deliberating?
Yes.
Yeah, she was at our office.
She was at your office. So can you take us into that a little bit without violating any privilege or anything? Was she just obviously?
I'm sure
pins and needles is an understatement. I'm sure.
I'm sure she was. She and her family were in one room. We were in another room. My wife and my little daughter were there. They hung out together. Skylar, my wife, and my daughter, to try to ease the tension.
Has the jury indicated that they were not willing to speak to you and or the prosecution? Or are you wanting to get back there? What's going on?
That I don't know, but I would like to speak with them if they want to speak with us.
Do you feel in light of the verdict that Skylar was overcharged?
Absolutely. This is, as her attorney and knowing other cases throughout the country, this was well overcharged from the get-go. And it was so juicy for the government to think that, not only did she murder her baby, but she burned her baby, which tainted the whole jury pool, which is what we were worried about from the very beginning. Ever since her indictment and ever since that news conference, we thought we were in a hole. And it was a really deep hole, in our opinion.
If I can ask both of you, in the early days of this, before she was even indicted, the prosecutor's office said, we charged her originally with reckless homicide because we have evidence this child was born alive. You all were obviously privy to this evidence way before we were. Was there proof that she was alive, this second interrogation that was so scrutinized in this trial?
We weren't given the interrogation transcripts or the videos until a couple months after she was indicted. We didn't know what the hell they had. We knew that, well, we thought, based on Skylar being adamant that she never, ever burned her baby, we thought that that would be a key to this case. And I would think that, well, you all watched it or heard the testimony, you would think that when it was scientifically impossible for her to have lit her baby on fire with a lighter, that everybody would think that's ridiculous. And you would have thought that the people who make decisions as to whether or not this actually happened would think the same thing. It's astounding to me.
Do you feel the prosecution planted enough reasonable doubt with their presentation of the case?
You mean intentionally?
Well, obviously not intentionally, but, there's been a lot of speculation.
Well, I think their witnesses turned out to be ours, except for the pathologist, that forensic pathologist whose name is now Brown. She just stuck to the narrative. She was, in my mind, I don't know, but she was protecting the prosecution's narrative.
Where does Skylar go from here? Because obviously, with everything, it might be hard. It probably will be hard for her to live a normal life.
Well, that's a great question that we can't answer. She's worked in our office since this came up, and hopefully she'll be able to go to college. She started classes, and I think she actually completed one semester at Sinclair, and I assume that she's going to go back to school, and hopefully this will get behind her.
This is a fifth-degree felony in Ohio you can seal. So 3 years after probation ends, she will be eligible to remove this from her record entirely.
So is there a civil component that comes after this? Because it sounds to me like there is maybe a basis here.
The statute's gone. There won't be anything civil.
I'd love to sue a few of the national media outlets that said that she bashed her baby's skull in and all that other stuff. I think that was that Nancy Grace show or whatever. That was atrocious, and it was a week before trial. Crazy.
You talk about media attention. This is pretty
intense.
Unprecedented. Can you just talk about her thoughts on this? And you say she's going to be able to have this removed from sealed in 3 years, but the internet lives on forever. Talk a little bit about that and what you hope for her, I guess.
Well, as time goes by, the more you live a different life, and hopefully this can be pushed farther in her past. But even an acquittal on all 4 counts, it would be something that Skylar is going to have to live with the rest of her life.
We know she's been under, tremendous stress, probably unthinkable stress over the last couple of years. And she obviously, a lot of talk about the eating disorder. She's painfully thin. Is she gonna get some help for this? I mean, I understand she was concerned about doing that because of what the rulings in the case, but she obviously, health is an issue here. I mean, that's...
She was living under this dark cloud for the past 2 years, living quite frankly, a nightmare. And hopefully, now that this is behind her, hopefully she will get help. Her parents, those of you who followed the testimony, had gotten her help when she started this disorder.
Charlie, you said her mom realizes that she did some things wrong with Skylar. Is that correct? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Kim's a good mom. I think that she didn't fully understand Skylar's eating disorder and the severity, or at least how to deal with it properly. And she thought that it would be good to cheer Skylar on to lose weight and also cheer her on to gain weight. She did both. And so she just wanted her to be at that equilibrium. And it, frankly, is not healthy because of what we know about that disease, but I don't think Kim had any malicious intent whatsoever.
So you don't think it was at an obsessive level?
No, she just wanted to help her daughter.
Well, I'd say to follow up on Mike's question, that is what I'm curious about. I'm a parent. What's the message to other parents who watch this trial from the start, watch the whole case from the start? And it seems like there's some cautionary tales here on a lot of levels. It's so tragic. I'm just curious to you both. I know you're parents and you understand what I'm talking about. What's your message tonight?
Wow. Quite frankly, I haven't thought about a message with regard to that, but obviously any parent should pay close attention to their child, and these parents did. They did. They, who knows what is right and what is wrong as you're raising kids. Look at what I ended up with, Lucky, by the way. But, I mean, seriously, as long as you try to be good parents, and both Scott and Kim Richardson were good parents, very good parents. And you can tell that from her brother who testified in this. They're just good people.
But I think you can probably say a conversation with your children about you can tell me anything, no matter what, probably would be a good lesson from this.
Well,
no matter how
that question assumes that they didn't. They did.
I don't know what they told her. I just know what they said in the interrogation.
I'm just saying your question assumes that they didn't. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the interrogation room.
The last time you guys were in this courthouse for a really, really big case, it was actually the Whitmer case. And my question to you is, you alleged in that case that was a rush to judgment, and you made the same allegation here. What do you hope that the authorities here might learn as a result of this situation?
You would think that from both, first of all, you can start with the police. You would think that once they got Skylar to say that she actually burned her baby and the baby combusted in the middle of the night after she delivered this stillborn, you would think that anybody who would review that report where the flames came up to the chest would know better. That's one. Number two is that when this was presented to this pathologist, you would think that a professional pathologist would think twice. Did that really happen? And as you all know, the evidence, at least the emails between me and that pathologist, where I had a conversation with her, and I specifically asked her that question, and she says, the question being, can you light a baby on fire with a lighter by touching its foot? And she said, and this is in the trial, I don't know, I never tried it. What? Is that really science? Is that really science? So then we go from there to the prosecutor's office, and they should have taken a little bit more careful review of what's going on, but they're relying on the experts being from that Montgomery County Coroner's Office.
Those text messages were moved by the prosecution front and center in the beginning of their opening statements. What do you have to say about teens and the way they text and maybe the perspective that would come from these messages?
Well, when my kids were younger and getting into that stuff, I personally warned them, don't ever write or text or email anything you don't want everybody to see. And here's a prime example. It's right here.
How soon did you all know about these text messages? How soon when they turned over to you?
About 4 months into the case, maybe.
Did you feel that they would be extremely damaging?
Well, we obviously didn't like 5 hours after she had this stillborn saying, oh my God, my belly's back. I mean, that, we'd be lying if we said we weren't worried about that. Absolutely.
That's not proof that she wasn't mourning inside or grieving, which I know she was.
You mentioned in your closings about outrage in the community, and you kind of placed a little, we tried to that as placing a little bit of blame on the prosecutors and people who announced that she burned her baby and everything. Can you talk about the effect that this case has had on the community? It's a small, Warren County doesn't have a lot of people. So what's it been like?
I don't know if there was much division in the community over this case or not. I try to stay out of the social media and press. Some of the statements that the prosecutor made, he made the statements that he thought were the most inculpatory, and that's what prosecutors do. But, that is a lot of clickbait material when you take those statements out of context. And now that we've had a trial, everyone can make a judgment for themselves after watching both these interrogations.
Do you expect Kim and Scott to move from the community?
We haven't talked to Kim Scott about that.
Charlie, are there ever any legal repercussions for prosecutions that overcharge? Or
No.
Use power?
The answer is no.
What about for police who engage in interrogations like this one?
You mean ramifications for them?
The Reed technique is frankly a very common interrogation method. I believe, I could be wrong on this, I believe one country might have banned the Reed method. But as we've had cases like podcasts and serial podcasts, Making a Murderer, people are starting to come around to the idea that there are false confessions. And it's pretty rare to be able to prove conclusively that what someone says is false, because prosecutors always say, well, do you lie to get in trouble or lie to get out of trouble? And for a lot of people, we don't understand how you can admit to something you didn't do. But DNA evidence has proved time and time again that grown men have admitted to things that they didn't do because of this Reed method.
Lieutenant Fain, or now retired Lieutenant Fain, said he wasn't familiar with the Reed technique. Did you see anything in?
He said he was familiar with
I
it.
thought he said he didn't.
He was familiar.
He was evasive. He didn't.
I'm sorry,
say,
I misunderstood that then.
I don't know if he said he was trained in it. He said he was familiar with it.
But was there anything in Detective Carter's personnel records that showed she had been to a training?
Detective Carter and Lieutenant Fain did the Reed technique to a T. And they were very good at their job. It was confrontation, minimization. Confrontation, minimization. That was the Reed technique. They both did it. Whether or not Lieutenant Fain had formal training in the Reed technique, I don't know.
I can tell you that I talked to Lieutenant Fain when he was on talking terms with us when this case was going on, and I asked him specifically if he was trained in the Reed technique, and he told me he was.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah.
After 2.5 years, Skylar was on through, and after everything that's gone on social media now, and stuff coming out about what happened in the case. I think 2 weeks ago there were still stories telling us the burned baby case.
Right.
I mean, just how does it feel for you two guys to help deliver this for your time?
Feels great. Feels great. It really does. I can't speak for my son, but I'm emotionally raw right now. Have been for the last 2 weeks.
What about it is maybe I've noticed is you are on this now. What about it has really affected you?
I'm so pissed off that she was charged. I mean, I was upset, especially once we got into the facts of the case, and then we had all this bad publicity, all the clickbait stuff. The Court of Appeals argument, where the assistant prosecutor during her argument in the Court of Appeals said that Skylar told her doctor that she never intended to have her baby, which was pure bullshit, and that was clickbait. That was international. We had people telling us they were in England and read something in some magazine there. She said she never intended to have the baby. She never said that.
Why didn't the family get an attorney before the second interrogation?
They trusted the police. They didn't think that their daughter was in any serious trouble whatsoever. It's a great question, which I should remind all of you to spread to your viewers, that you should never, ever, when your loved one is being investigated by the police, not consult with an attorney. It doesn't mean you're guilty just because you're consulting with somebody before you talk to the police, but that attorney should be able to protect you from stuff like this.
So there will be people who will think that, hey, maybe she really did it, but they just didn't meet the legal requirements. What would you say to the people in the community that continue to possibly judge Skylar for that?
Yes. I apologize. I was looking at my wife who's telling me to calm down.
So whether or not the verdict is not guilty verdict synonymous with innocence, is that the question, Janice?
Well, that people will say, oh, well, she at least did it, but they just couldn't prove it.
Everyone's entitled to an opinion. I mean, I really truly believe in my heart of hearts Skylar had a stillbirth. She's absolutely innocent. I really do believe that. But as I said in my closing, the law, a not guilty verdict does not necessarily mean that the jury believes there's a stillbirth. They believe that there was reason to doubt whether or not there's a live birth. I do believe Skylar actually had a stillbirth. I believe that in my heart. I know it.
Charlie, you asked Scott during the trial, what's your biggest regret? If you to piggyback on the lawyer question,
sure.
It was not getting a lawyer for that second police interrogation. Had they retained either of you or some other attorney before either of those? Are we even here at this point? Are we even?
They had not.
Trial?
We would not be. And they had not consulted with any attorney until after the second interrogation. In fact, they arrested her after that second interrogation, and that's when Scott called an attorney he knew. And Scott said, look, if I was sitting on this jury and hadn't gone through this experience myself, and someone told me that the police can lie and manipulate you, I would not believe it. He just trusted the police, and he thought that they were there to do what was best for his daughter.
Would you have even allowed her to be interviewed a second time?
No.
What do you think?
I would think no.
You saw what happened. Yeah.
You won. You can smile now.
As a point of clarification, did the state ever give you a method in which they believe she killed the baby?
They didn't have them. They didn't know. And it was a complete shock to both of us. During the trial, they put that, I think it was Sergeant Smith, up there to say, oh, that blood stain looks like the torso of a baby. The
small torso.
Yes. Yeah. And it was a blood sample in the bedroom. And it was a complete shock to me. I don't know about my son.
Yeah.
That they switched from the bathroom to the bedroom because I think of that comment that they got Sergeant Smith to say.
Why do you think the prosecution did not call Kim to the stand?
Who?
Kim Richardson.
We were waiting for them to do that, but
I think they thought they might have to call her to the stand if we raised an objection on hearsay regarding text messages. I mean, I think that's why they had her being held out here on a subpoena. That's my gut.
But those tech people can always testify to that stuff, right? I mean, typically if they pull it and extract it, they can testify to that. So it's like you already have that.
They did on Skylar's phone. They testified to that. Detective Wong did. We didn't raise the objection, so never.
Why did you guys not call Skylar?
Well, you saw her be manipulated by the police officers in the second interrogation, and you saw, and Julie Kraft was just doing her job as a prosecutor, but, you know, when their witness, Dr. Andrew, Dr. Boyce, you know, these are grown doctors who've been well-versed in the ways of the world, and you saw how they had trouble testifying under cross-examination pressure. It's just, I thought it was a lose-lose situation. Skylar had already spoken to the police on July 14th, told them everything that happened. The jury got to hear from her by looking at the interrogation tapes, and putting her on the stand, the juror is not with us. They're going to think everything she says is to try to save herself. And if they are, they might have thought that she saved herself by testifying properly. I just don't think it's a win-win.
Did you feel it unnecessary to call Detective Carter to ask her about her interrogation of Skylar, since she did a lot of the talking in that second one?
We thought about it. Calling her on cross.
No.
Okay, I didn't know if
I wasn't cross-examining.
Okay. You've done that before. So.
We considered calling her, but not because of what was going on in the second interrogation. I think everybody who
the fire report, or
we thought the jury understood the case. They watched the interrogations themselves, and we didn't want to belabor a point.
But the fire marshal report, she could have.
We could have also called. We could have potentially gotten it in through a government public records exception. We could have potentially gotten it in by just calling the fire marshal down to testify to authenticate that document. The jury heard it. Lieutenant Fain testified to it. I believe a doctor testified to it. And the jury knew that fire marshal's report was there.
What are the biggest things you guys learned from this case, and what are the biggest things you hope that some of the powers that be might be able to learn here as well?
Well, I would hope that the powers that be learn to test whatever theories or whatever crazy stuff that comes out of a suspect's mouth before they decide that it's actual fact. I would hope that they would do their what's called due diligence in determining whether or not, in fact, does it make sense what we're dealing with here? Are we going to use this as a basis of our evidence against this person that we've decided to accuse?
Will the family be getting the remains back, and if so, are they going to plan some sort of funeral?
Yes, they actually have. We couldn't put this into evidence, but they have a burial plot, in fact 2 burial plots that were transferred to them back in November of 2017. They started making arrangements between July 14th interrogation and the July 20th interrogation, and they've wanted to do a proper memorial and burial, and they told Lieutenant Fain that prior to that July 20th interrogation.
So when do you expect those remains to be released back to the family?
That I don't know.
I would hope immediately.
Yeah.
I would hope immediately.
What do you hope Skylar's future looks like from here on out?
She can work at our office for as long as she wants. Everyone at our office loves Skylar. I don't think that we had a productive 2 weeks. Everyone at the office was watching this trial live, and that's because they believed in her. They got to know her over the past 2 years. And the kind soul that you heard everyone talk about, her counselor and teachers and friends, that's genuinely who she is.
She wanted to work with children before. Do you think this kind of, even though there's a not guilty verdict, do you know?
Could. I'm not going to speak for what Skylar wants to do in the future.
Has she expressed an interest in law because of all this?
I haven't talked to Skylar much about her career. Future.
We're trying to save her life.
Yeah.
Where did the name Annabelle come from?
I don't want to get into that. I don't know if Skylar would like that.
Are we finished?
Is there anything we didn't ask that you all want to mention?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.